Hi, Cedars family. This is Miss Rolfe, and I want to introduce you to my brother, Byron. He
Oh,
he lives here in the Austin area and works for Dell Computers. So let's go ahead and get started with some questions. What is your role at Dell?
sure. So I am a senior advisor, but my role is really a project manager for the supply chain finance team. Recently rotated to that team back in June. So I've been at Dell for a little over 11 years. So I've had various roles since that time, but my most current role is the project manager for supply chain finance enablement.
So supply chain would be getting products through from the factory to the warehouse to the consumer.
So it's even broader. It goes from our suppliers, from the individual parts to our factories, and then getting the finished products through our fulfillment chain of warehouses to our to the customer.
Okay, great. All right. Next question is, what kind of education or training did you receive to qualify for this career?
So I went to college at Brigham Young University. I have a finance degree, really it's a business management with an emphasis in finance. And that led me to come to Dell as an internal auditor. And I was in internal audit for 2 years with that degree. Learned a little bit about the company, about different processes, transitioned to the operations side and inventory control. And so using my education background of finance with my governance skill set in audit as well as in inventory control has allowed me to transition to this role where supply chain finance, which is inventory, it's just on the finance side. So inventory side, governance side.
In other words, there were things that you learned in college to help you get a job, but it also took training from Dell, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, we get training every year, to be honest. So there's different kinds of training that we go through. Some of it is specific to our roles. Some of it's just specific to the company. But each one of us will have different training programs to walk through as well.
Okay, awesome. So the team that you work with are you all here in Texas, or are there people throughout the world that you work with?
No, so my role is actually the U.S. focused team member. I have one team member in EMEA. I do have sorry, that's Europe, Europe, Middle East, and then I do have one team member. He's kind of a rotational team member, and so he's on a rotational program, and he's based in California right now, but he's going to be rotating off of our team soon. We have 2 team members in Malaysia, and then trying to think. We do have one team member. She used to be on our team, but she's pulled under a different team. So she's based here in the U.S., but that's not part of our team. Sorry.
Okay, that's okay. So how do you guys work together? How do you collaborate together when you're not in the same space?
Absolutely. So that's one of the advantages of working for a technology company is you definitely utilize technology in what we do, whether it's through emails, through video conferencing calls, or even video conferencing calls. So we have a weekly checkpoint that we just get together because we're all working on different projects, but understanding that what's happening in one part of the world might impact a different part of the world, being a global company, that we want to make sure that we're understanding what everyone's going through and working on. And so we have a summary. We just had it today, actually. So we have it every Monday where we get on a conference call. We go through just a summary of our projects, where we're at. And then once a quarter, it moved to twice a quarter, we actually have a management roll-up where we get together as well and report to management. And so that's from our team level. The unique thing about my team is that each one of us is on the separate projects is part of a core team on those projects. So not only are we on a finance side, we're the finance rep on those teams, but we're also working with cross-functional team members in each of these projects that, again, are not all based in the same location. And even here in the US, I work with people in Massachusetts and in North Carolina, in Nashville, Tennessee. So it really depending on the project, and that work in Mexico as well. And so we're utilizing technology, whether it's through email, phone calls, video calls, all the time, utilizing the the different applications that are out there to make us most effective.
Awesome, thank you. And how do you use critical thinking skills and problem solving skills in your position?
Yeah, this is a great question, because that's what our job is. We're involved in projects that are designed to figure out a solution to a problem. So our leadership team has given us, we want to do this, go and figure it out how to do it. And so we have to go figure out, well, what do we do today? And then, that's what these core teams do. We get together, understand the different processes that each function does in relation to this, into this area. And then we have our current view, then we have to figure out, well, what's the end state view and how do we bridge that gap? And so that's really what our jobs are in the team is to figure out those solutions, working together as a cross-functional team to figure out that, what's the best process. It may not be the most efficient, but what's the best for the company that won't break anything as we implement it.
Okay, awesome. So, so really, you have to go through a process to solve these problems. Like, so you brainstorm ideas, and then you kind of maybe put like a flow chart together to see if there's anything that you can see automatically that's not going to work, and you might maybe try it out before you implement it throughout the whole company. Is that basically how you would?
From a very basic level, yeah, it's exactly. We work a lot in flowcharts, and a lot of it is to see, because especially when we get cross-functional flowcharts together, what we change in one function's flowchart, we need to make sure it doesn't break a different function's flowchart. And so we do need to see that and walk through those processes. And so, yeah, that's exactly what we do. We brainstorm, we data gather, and then figure out where do we need to go to get the solution.
Awesome, thanks. So in your position, how important is it for you to be proficient in oral communication and written communication?
Again, working as a cross-functional team member, being efficient in both of those is critical. We have team members, like I said, in different parts of the country, and so or even globally. So it's not that we're on the same call all the time, and so we do have to do emails sometimes, and sometimes we have to go off on our own subject matter expertise, work with our functional team, and then come back. And so it's being able to translate and make sure we're communicating effectively what we've learned from our functional teams back to our core teams, making sure that we're not losing any of the requirements that are needed. And then on top of that, it's being able to understand your audience. So that there's a different kind of communication with the details of working the solution. But then when we roll it up to a management level or to an executive level, there's different levels of, different ways of communicating.
So in my school, they have to give presentations to present what they've learned through the problem-based learning or the project-based learning. So do you still give presentations in your position, or how does that?
I'm giving one on Thursday.
So yes, the time.
all the time. So, and that's how it is in business, is that you're going to be, no matter what you're working on, you're going to give a presentation to someone, whether it could be your direct manager, which is usually a little bit more detailed. But if you're giving it to her or his manager, a skip level manager, it's more of a summary level, and it's a higher level. So it's that ability to
Know who
modify
your audience is.
exactly, to know your audience and modify your message and have that story.
Mhm.
That's what it is. It's about storytelling, and it's it's telling the story of where we are, what we've done, and where we're going.
Great. So, what are some tools that you use in your job to keep yourself organized with your tasks and things like that?
So going back to some of the trainings that I've taken, and I've had some really good trainings on how to use OneNote and Microsoft OneNote, Microsoft, that a lot of people probably aren't taught some of the ways to utilize those tools. I will say that I'm not the best. I'm still learning because every year Microsoft changes them. So
Right. Yeah.
and so, but the concept of utilizing the tools that are available is definitely an important. Staying organized. Some people on my team have great templates just in Excel, just to keep their tasks aligned and what they need to focus on during their projects. I've been looking at those and seeing if there's not some good ideas in those to implement. And I think the key thing here is that there's no cookie cutter answer on what tool to use. It's find what works best for you and gives you the right results that you're expecting, and then utilize it. Don't let go just because you found it. That
Yeah.
make sure you use it and stay organized and keep your tasks on pace and because that's one thing with technology is that there's so many applications out there in this world of there's an app for everything. There is an app for everything.
Yeah.
And so it's find what helps you and which one works with your lifestyle, your work style, and then utilize it.
Awesome. Okay. So, my students won't know this, but you are bilingual. You speak both English and Russian. And so what are some advantages that you being bilingual has given you in your job?
Well, I think it's definitely an opportunity to broaden your scope of where you can have an impact. Having my second language be Russian, which is not very. There are some people here in Austin that speak it, but not a whole lot in my business that I work at. I'm able to work more with the European nations, and I think it's a lot of understanding culture, even and how others work, in the culture that you're familiar with, and understanding and being able to again going back to the communication, being able to communicate effectively with those other cultures. There has been an opportunity for me to translate a few things. When I was an auditor, we had an engagement that was in Russia, and one of my colleagues asked me, Byron, can you translate this? Because I'm not sure what they sent us. And so there are those opportunities, and if you express desire, there's definitely opportunities to get on those kinds of engagements, to utilize that skill set, because it is a skill set that, especially with a global company, there's opportunities to work with colleagues that's their first language. And so if you have that skill set, then you can help bridge that gap with those colleagues.
Awesome. Thank you. And last question, what advice would you give to students who are learning and communicating over technology?
So I'll start with learning first. One is don't ever stop. That's one thing with technology. If you haven't noticed in the past 8 years, technology continues to advance exponentially, and to see what even just what the iPhone can do now that it didn't before, and and same thing with computers, same thing with all of the different aspects of technology, virtual reality, etc. Don't ever stop learning. Don't think that now that I understand this, that there's not more to learn, because there's always going to be more to learn, and the more you can learn as a youth, in your young years, the better off you're going to be as an adult, and being able to adapt. That's a big thing that you see in the workplace now, is that even those adults that are able to adapt to new technology are better off than those that are really striving not to change.
Yeah.
Resisting that change. Secondly, about communicating over technology, it goes back to know your audience. There's definitely times where a text message is appropriate. That's probably one thing I didn't talk about. We use instant message applications in our company as well, and so I can instant message someone across the world at a moment's click, and to be concise and use terminology that is appropriate to the method. Ensure that who you're sending it to is making sure you're also wording it correctly and effectively as well. You probably won't say the same thing to a colleague that you would to an executive, and so making sure that you're not all of a sudden emailing someone that you shouldn't with the words, make sure you double check what you wrote, because that can come back to bite you.
So what you're saying is so there's a difference in tone and, well, they call it you would use a formal register like with an executive or a manager.
Absolutely, yeah.
Where
a more formal language.
It would be more casual with like a coworker or someone that's on the same level you are.
Right. And again, something on that, even though a person's at the same level, you haven't interacted with that person, you still start with that formal register until you get that relationship and you do have that interaction. So it's having the ability to adapt your communication to the appropriate audience in the appropriate situation is a critical thing in business. And I think another thing is, don't be afraid to pick up the phone.
Okay.
Sometimes it's,
do that.
Well, sometimes, especially if you're trying to get an answer from a manager or from an executive. I know as a not being a manager or an executive, my inbox gets filled really fast. And so they may not be responding, not that they're ignoring your email, but they may not have gotten it to it yet. And so there's definitely been times where I have had to pick up the phone and say, hey, can you address this email? It's an important one. You may not have seen it yet. And it's okay to do that. And it's definitely more effective and efficient when instead of sending out multiple emails and by the end of the week you've sent out 5 emails and you still haven't received a response. So it's definitely one to just know that communication is not just the written. Definitely that's another place for oral communication, making sure that you're appropriately speaking to the right individuals as well. But again, making sure that you're using their time effectively and your own time effectively.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. I know my students are going to enjoy this, and it'll help us in our project a lot on 21st century skills. So thanks so much, and we'll talk to you later.
Sounds good.